Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are on our fourth of four episodes or programs related to the Cape Community Water Forum. I'm Madhavi Venkatesan, the Executive Director of Sustainable Practices. We developed this program, and our co-sponsors are the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, Sierra Club Cape Cod, Cape Cod 350 Cape Cod, and Blue Institute Labs, who is actually going to be the primary focus of this session. Before I get started, I'd like to say a little bit of background about sustainable practices. Many of you do know us, but this week we are starting our spring town meeting season. It will start on Monday, May 3rd, which means that we will have two town meetings, one in Bourne and one in Sandwich, specifically for the municipal and commercial single-use plastic water bottle bans, respectively, excuse me. The issue here is the municipal ban would take us to 14 out of 15 Cape towns that have adopted a municipal ban, which eliminates town purchase of single-use plastic bottled beverages and the sale of beverages in single-use plastic containers on town property. With the commercial ban, it would be town number 8 with Sandwich. We would have eliminated the sale of single-use plastic water bottles in any jurisdictional area of a town. So we have 7 towns that have already passed this: Brewster, Wellfleet, Eastham, Provincetown, Falmouth, Harwich, and Orleans. So we're very happy tonight to continue our series with regard to water. Our desire in focusing on water was both to educate and illuminate certain specific areas related to water and water issues. One being the fact that we are regulated when we have municipal water, the other being the adverse consequences of any kind of pollutant activity that we put on the ground, because we are on a single source aquifer. And we were very fortunate to have Tom Cambereri speak with us last week related to that topic. This week, we're actually talking about potential solutions to emerging issues. And I'm very happy to introduce Judith Underwood, who is one of the co-sponsors of this program with Blue Institute Labs. Judith Underwood is a social entrepreneur, environmentalist, and an educator who is dedicated to supporting sustainable practices, not necessarily this organization, but sustainable practices meaning the generic term, for equitable and accessible economic development. She is a CEO and co-founder of Blue Institute Labs, PBC, the home of the Blue Accelerator, the Blue Incubator, and the future home of the Oceanfront Blue Innovation Center. Judith is an ecosystem builder and is passionate about growing blue tech and the wider blue economy through the Northeast, or Blue New England. I put the new in there. She believes strongly in bringing startups together with academia, industry, government agencies to create innovation through collaboration. Judith also founded the Blue Institute, Inc., a nonprofit global hub for education, research, community engagement, and is home to the Blue Semester. Both the Blue Institute and the Blue Institute Labs are mission-driven to support clean water, climate resiliency, and healthy and secure oceans. And with that, I will give it to, I was gonna say Blue. I
Blue's
said
fine.
Blue so many times. I'll give it to Judith. Thank you, Judith. I appreciate your being here this evening.
Thank you, Madhavi, very much. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase two really fantastic startup companies, even though they're not brand new, for them to give you a little bit background about what they do and their journey and how it relates to clean water and helping our oceans. We started the Blue Institute Lab in 2017 specifically to help get these solutions forward. And I'm now going to invite Serge Albino. Serge, can you tell a little bit about yourself, your background, and then go right in to your presentation, and just tell me next whenever you need the next slide.
Sure. Thank you, Judith. Pleasure to be here tonight. Joined here by Brian and Madhavi as well. No, my background is actually aerospace engineering by trade. Did a lot of work on small satellites and lunar rover programs at NASA, as well as payload development for the Space Shuttle and International Space Station program. And always have been an entrepreneur at heart. And in 2012, when I saw the last shuttle land, I knew that access to space was not going to be around for the next 8 to 10 years until the private sector would come about. So I decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship and had a core focus on sustainability. And little did I know that I would run into technology developed at NASA for environmental remediation, extraction of PCBs and other contaminated media later on, that would spring up ecospheres, and here we are to date. So that's a little bit about my background. Judith, if you want to hit the next slide. So again, this is my background here. Again, much younger back then. I think this was back in 2009, where we got to almost always touch the shuttle at the center. And the technology that we actually license and attain the exclusive license to, which is a pretty commendable feat, is the NASA SPEARS technology, that stands for Sorbent Polymer Extraction and Remediation System. So what you see there on the bottom right, as we're deploying for our deployment at San Diego, Port of San Diego, as part of their Blue Economy Accelerator program. And we have smaller versions of these things also. This one is built out for US Coast Guard that will be deploying in Guam pretty soon. But it's a spike that would absorb chemical contamination from sediments and pore water. Next slide, please. So what is or who are we as ecospheres? We build clean technology that eliminates toxic contamination from land and water, right? And we use these proprietary technologies, both from NASA as well as technologies that we build internally. But our core focus is really not just extraction and capturing the technologies, but eliminating them from our clients' balance sheets forever. And we eliminate it via non-thermal and non-combustion process. And this is either done via chemical dehalogenation or chemical destruction, or via UV destruction as well. Big focus for our company. We always go after the BHAG mission, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and really lean towards that North Star that the UN's SDGs basically guide us through. And we primarily focus on 3, 6, 13, and 14. Next slide, please. Judith, next slide.
Trying, there we go.
There you go. So the contaminations that we focus on are PCBs. These are major toxins that are found in rivers and streams. Actually, 94% of rivers and streams that were fish that were sampled in these rivers and streams in the US in 2012 by EPA contain polychlorinated biphenyls, dioxins, and other persistent organic pollutants. You could probably make out, where the New England is in this sector, and you could even map out the Mississippi River. Lots of contamination, and this contamination does not discriminate at all. It's found in other parts of the world as well. And this contamination was banned in 1979 by EPA, but yet it's still pervasive and persistent all around. Next slide. And as we basically navigate our company throughout other parts of the world, we're also looking at other persistent organic pollutants or emerging contaminants like dioxins and PFAS, as well as even 1,4-dioxane. So pretty happy to note that we'll have some programs coming up in Sweden, as well as Southern Africa pretty soon as well. Next slide. Changing?
I'm trying.
No worries. So, PCBs, if you're not familiar with it and how it affects your daily life, I mean, it's pretty much everywhere. We're seeing not only levels of PCBs in sediments and drinking water, but you're also starting to see a decline in populations of northern Atlantic bottlenose dolphins, as well as orcas, apex predators, basically, that are coming back with high levels of PCBs because it bioaccumulates and biomagnifies as they eat more smaller fish throughout the food chain. So it's not just a human problem, but it's also a multi-species problem as well. Next slide. And again, asking how does it affect you? Well, if you like recreational sports in the water, like myself, and you like to kayak or play around in the muck, yeah, it affects you. If you like sushi or oyster, definitely there too. And really what we want to do here is remove these things from the environment forever instead of just sequestering them with carbon or trying to dredge them out in the river, which sometimes causes a bit more stirring up of the muck and resuspension and moving it further downriver. So we want to do it much more surgically and strategically. Next slide, please. So again, going back to the options that I mentioned there, there's capping, there's dig and haul, there's incineration. There's different ways of basically going after this contaminant. What we like to focus on are more sustainable approaches, which is basically one that does not impact the environment tremendously like these other options. And we certainly do not like incineration, so I don't think we need to trade off clean soil or clean water for clean air, right? So if we can destroy these contaminants via non-incineration ways, we will definitely do that. We have the technologies for that. Next slide, please. So in 2017, Ian and I and our other co-founder, Dr. Phil Maloney there in the back, signed our exclusive license agreement with NASA Kennedy Space Center. And ever since, we've been basically commercializing this technology as well as a few other NASA technologies around the country and around the world. And we have a great relationship with NASA and NASA technology transfer. And we are actually in plan to be licensing more techs from NASA and collaborating more. Next slide. So specifically for sediment remediation, we use the SPEARS technology, which is the sorbent polymer extraction remediation system. This is basically a plastic spikes embedded in a mat liner that we then press down into the sediments. And we leave it there to absorb just the contaminants. And once the contamination has been absorbed from the pore water and from the sediments, we then remove the plastic spikes and mats, process the alcohol that's on the inside for UV destruction or chemical dehalogenation, and we get to regenerate the alcohol and reuse the spikes so that our plastic spikes are not single-use plastics. We actually focus quite a bit on sustainability, being from NASA background. And all of our spikes and all of our alcohols actually regenerate and used in the same body of water. Next slide. From a destructive capability, this technology was originally developed for our regeneration of alcohol from SPEARS and from our soil washing process or solvent washing process also of soils. But we recently have pivoted this technology to also be part of a pump and treat system to treat PCBs and other contamination from groundwater as well as wastewater as well. So another technology we're rolling out to market. Next slide. And just a case study of the UV cube. Don't have to go this. You could ask questions later on. I'll be glad to answer it. Next slide, Judith. Trying to be mindful of time. And again, a core focus for us is sustainable cleanup technologies so that we're not sacrificing the environment at the same time trying to actually clean it up. So we want to just be very, very mindful and very smart about how we do environmental cleanup these days. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Serge. So now it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Brian Bragenton-Smith, who is from Cape Cod himself. I've known Brian and his work for over a decade. He is one of the strongest sustainability persons I've ever met in my life, and great mind. And I really love his passion for working with young people too, and helping them learn about their environment and how they can participate in this. So, Brian?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Judith. You know, it kind of puts me a little bit, anyway, put that behind me. Okay, so basically what we've got here is this is a presentation that I put together for Rotary International. I'm a member of the working group that's putting together the form for the new plank of action for Rotary International to deal with climate change, sustainability, and biodiversity. So that's basically what this presentation is about, is connected communities and moving towards a smart future. So next slide, please. Basically, the way that I do things is based on a four-way test. It's something that is a part of the Rotary ethos. And that basically is that there are four basic precepts. One, is it the truth? In other words, what we say is the truth. When we do things, is it fair for all concerned? Will it build better friendships and goodwill? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Next slide. Basically, where this all came from was the Lewis Bay Research Center. And going back about a better part of 30 years now, I grew up down here on Lewis Bay and been scuba diving since I could ride a bike. So I know what the underwater environment looked like back then. And I was seeing things change, and it was causing me a great deal of concern. And so we formed the research center in order to be able to try to figure out what the heck was going on out there. What you see here is an offshore remote monitoring platform that we installed in 2006. We've got to refit the whole thing. It's been a while. Basically, it is a oceanographic and atmospheric monitoring platform, and basically it's also on a rock that used to be the nemesis of anybody that navigated Lewis Bay. Next slide. So what I'm doing is trying to figure out how to deal with both nutrient pollution and atmospheric CO2. And the reason I'm showing this map is that this is a map that shows the greenhouse gas concentrations for the United States. Basically, it has a lot to do with where fossil fuel generation and heavy transportation activity is. And you can see the megalopolis from Cape Cod all the way down to the Chesapeake that is glowing red. Those are the concentrations. So we're downwind of it all. And in fact, on Cape Cod, we often have days during the summer when there is ground level ozone public health alerts for the air quality. Next slide, please. So what we're up to is we're trying to basically bring about the 3 R's, and that's to take responsibility for what has been done to solve the problem. And this is a global initiative. We're looking for resiliency, and how do we bring about resiliency for the community? We focus on water, food, energy, and the built environment. And the focus that we're trying to move towards is a regenerative economy and a regenerative initiative that will help to restore biological diversity and repair the damage to the planet that we've already done. Next slide, please. Basically, we use in our evolution and development, we use sort of the resilience polygon that you see here, and that's taken into consideration all of the elements associated with the built environment and the way that we live our lives, and trying to figure out how to deal with each of these in a holistic way in order to be able to bring about a comprehensive solution to both sustainability and resilience for our communities here on Cape Cod in a way that helps to streamline the process, because the other take-home message is that we've kind of run out of time. Next slide. So what do I do? Well, I've got a little bit of an exciting thing to announce here, and that is that Aquagen, my company, has been involved, has been around for quite some time. We were trying to figure out how to come up with a way to eliminate the waste and to create beneficial collateral byproducts that would help to bring down the cost and increase the value of infrastructure in our communities. Basically, what we've done is utilize membrane bioreactor technology along with algae biotech in order to be able to convert wastewater into a highly beneficial water stream that then has the potentiality to be able to provide irrigation for very productive urban or sort of smart water and agriculture systems. The company that we have become connected with is a group called Autonomous CRE. They're involved in connected communities from the data side and from the energy side, solar and renewable energy, battery storage, EV charging, and full integration into the built environment. Our organization has been acquired by a what is referred to as a transition fund that basically has about a $40 billion base, and they've committed to work with us to aggressively accelerate the installation and development of communities with a fully comprehensive integrated infrastructure solution. Next slide, please. Basically, these are images of what we do. The image to the left is a algae vortex tank, which is basically a blend tank. You see the hydroponic vegetables, and you see the vertical wall algae photobioreactor. The structures are built and housed in a greenhouse facility. The greenhouse is actually all constructed out of clear glass photovoltaic panels, so that the greenhouse becomes the renewable energy platform, which houses the renewable water system, which then creates the regenerative farm equipment. And with the membrane separation, we separate down to the molecular level. So the water coming out of it is pure water, pure H2O. And then we run that through the algae photobioreactor. And what that does is it polishes off most of the rest of the nutrients, and it converts any CO2 from the carbonaceous oxidation process into oxygen, which then is very beneficial for the hydroponics operation. So basically, what we're doing is creating a fully integrated community resiliency program. Next slide, please. So if you look at the slide up above, that's a conventional wastewater treatment plant. And basically what you see there are clarifiers and settling tanks and treatment tanks. Basically, it's all based on gravity and the such, and it requires a great deal of acreage. That upper picture is a plant that might be able to treat about 1 million gallons a day. And in the conventional sense, that probably would take up about 4 or 5 acres maybe. And down below that, you see a single steel frame building. We actually did that facility for the town of Cohasset, and we upgraded their existing treatment plant from a RBC, which could handle 90,000 gallons a day, to a MBR process, and that increased the capacity to 1 million gallons a day, and it took the wastewater from a problematic effluent to something that was a crystal clean water source. So that was a successful operation. That's the future of where we're going, and we have to start looking at infrastructure as elements of a system, not as standalone items, because the silos tend to create a great deal of added cost and also expense to trying to get the systems done. Next slide, please. So urban agriculture is another thing that's really important from a standpoint of local sustainability and circular economics, because if you can produce your resources locally, then you are independent and you're more secure. Next slide, please. Basically, again, the upper slide is a membrane separation unit. Basically, it uses a vacuum in order to be able to create a low head vacuum that slowly pulls the water through the membrane, and it just works. We actually installed the first one of these back in 1993 for a commercial laundry in South Yarmouth that was 100% recycling. It didn't need a discharge permit because it didn't discharge anything. We're working with schools. We did the Setna schools. And when you use reuse in an office building or a school, you can reduce the water consumption by 90% because all of the water used is mostly in flush water. In a residential application, we figure we'll drop the residential use of potable water by 40%. And the same applications can be applied to industrial, agricultural, site irrigation, and drinking water needs. Next slide, please. Now, this is the exciting part. The building in the upper right is actually a drone image of a small commercial building that we have at 42 Midtech Drive in West Yarmouth. And as you can see, the roof is covered with PV panels. That's about 125 kW. If you look closely, you can see that there are 3 EV charging stations there in the upper left of the parking lot, and you can barely see the battery systems there in the white containers to the right behind the building. So what that is a nanogrid. And that is basically something that is connected to the grid, but has the capacity to be able to go off grid and be completely independent. And the way that these are being structured completely realigns the whole dynamic of the utility interface. So it's a very exciting time, and we're working with the folks from Rethink X, Tony Seba and Jamie Arbib on this whole evolution to the connected community microgrids. Next slide, please. Basically, what they're talking about is the fact that with renewable energy and battery storage, and with offshore wind, the dynamo of the Northeast here about ready to finally kick into gear, we'll be in a position to be basically a net zero region within the next 15 years. And by the way, this transition to renewables, battery storage, and EVs, Tony Seba has a great story he likes to tell. And that is that if you were to go to New York City in 1905 and take a photograph, and he's got photographs that he uses to demonstrate this story, and you were asked to find the car in the picture, you would take some time, but you'd find one car and then just all horses and carriages. And then there's another picture that was 1921. And in that picture, you can't find the horse because that's the transition, about a 15-year transition period. That's what's going on right now. And it's being created by the birth of renewable energy, or let's call it the acceptance and the decrease in cost of renewable energy, the onset of battery storage and the electric vehicle. So we're at the cusp of an incredible transition to a really interesting future. Sustainability, resiliency, and a regenerative approach are going to be what it's going to be about. Next slide, please. So this is basically what ends up as a result of it, is that you end up with a smart network where everything communicates. Your energy is directly connected to your demand, so that you're no longer in that paradigm of having to oversize your generation for sort of peak demand. So it changes the dynamic, and it's what they call God power or superpower, and it's where the local generation supersedes the cost of the grid, and it's kind of just the gateway to the future. Next slide, please. So it goes all the way down to the home. This is the built environment. This is all stuff that's available today. And most all of these things are available in smart technology, which can communicate with the smart grid. Next slide. That includes lighting. These lights are actually solar powered, and they do not connect to the power grid. They are completely independent. They come with different options. You can get them with a high 5G Wi-Fi charging stations. They've got enough battery storage to run for 8 days without sun. And the key here is that by integrating this in your infrastructure, in your community, what ends up happening is that you end up living in real time. So you will have a very high level of your real-time conditions, both in the built environment and in the natural environment, so that our communities can become smarter. Next slide, please. This actually is a project that we're working on with the Dennis Yarmouth Regional Schools. They're building a new middle school, and in concert with that, we're working with them to create a net zero campus in water and greenhouse gas production. Next slide, please. It's going to start with the greenhouse-based algae photobioactor urban farming laboratory that will be part of their current science STEM curriculum. And basically, the build out is that the infrastructure will become an experiential learning platform for the students, so that they will be able to understand infrastructure, they'll be able to understand sustainability, and they will understand local circular economic dynamics by the time they graduate from high school with talent that will allow them to either enter into that field that they happen to be focused on, or to go on to higher education. And the platform is intended to be a center for lifelong learning, because this new transition is going to create tremendous opportunity. And it's not just the kids that are going to have to be learning new stuff to be able to compete in this new world. So we see this as being a very important element of the future. Next. Internet of Things is kind of where things are at. We've had the basic utilities that go back to ancient Rome and the Middle East, and all of the utilities kind of evolved at their own place in time. And now the next kid on the block, data, is going to be the one that is responsible for making the connection between them all and bringing them all into what you might call a smart configuration. Next slide. Electric vehicles, of course, Tesla is kind of the poster child for this, but they are happening and they will be the future. And basically by 2035 or 2050, fossil fueled internal combustion engines will be no longer. Next slide. This actually is my sailboat, and that's me on a close reach trying to get past the high end of sport breakwater. Anybody that sails knows that basically I'm pinching the wind and I'm trying to make a difficult tack. And the reason I put this in here is because that's kind of where we're at from a standpoint of where we are in space and time and with our climate and with our future. So we've got to, all hands on deck, keep the hand on the tiller, hand on the sheet, and beat to windward. So we've got to act. We've got to do things in a holistic way, and we've got to do them in a comprehensive fashion, inclusively and expeditiously. Because again, we don't have time. Next slide. There's no reason why the answers can't come from here. And this slide or this presentation is now a part of the lexicon of Rotary International, and we have created a position paper on connected communities that will help to lead the new platform for action for a couple of million Rotarians worldwide. So thank you. That's the presentation.
Thank you, Brian, very much. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to turn it over to Madhavi now for the
Yes,
the
thank you both very
questions.
much. We have a few questions, and I'm going to try to orchestrate them between both of you, if you don't mind. So I'm going to start off with one question that's more generic, and it's for both of you, and then I'll go to two different questions that are unique to each of you. How do you define sustainability?
Well, sustainability is living today in a fashion that doesn't compromise the potential of future generations to live, and that future generations is not anthropocentric. That future generations refers to the planet and the biosphere as well.
Yeah, ditto to exactly what Brian there said. When when we worked at NASA and developed payloads for space deployment, sustainability to us was focused around a multi-use type of payload, right? It can't be a single purpose, or else you're sending a one single-use purpose item out there and it becomes dead weight and costs a lot of money to bring back down to Earth, or push it out the window and become space trash. So everything that you have to do there, you got to think of sustainability and reuse, renewables all in mind. And that's really the only way to kind of live in an area where, you know, you have to treat everything as a closed volume, right? So you cannot generate things that you know you don't want to be ingesting back in at a later point in time. We just got to start thinking the Earth is a closed volume once again. I think it's just so big that people forget about that.
That question actually segues into a couple of build-on questions. This question is actually specific to the impacts of the clean technologies themselves. And specifically, Clara has noted the negative, what are the negative impacts of wind turbines, such as on other species, the manufacturing and disposal of these particular technologies. And I'm going to add in there PV. When we look at these products, they are not built cradle to cradle. They are built cradle to grave. How do these transitions to new energies actually assist us? Are we just looking at an iterative process of just reducing the harm, but not necessarily eliminating it?
Been involved in the wind industry for a little bit, so I think I can probably field that one. And the way that I would sort of describe it is that everything is evolving right now along a certain line. And basically the problem that we're in is because that linear path did not consider the end product impact. And so the focus was on, you know, what can you get it for cheap as you can, and what can you get away with, and what can you basically, what do you need and not have to pay more for? And so it's gotten us into a bit of a bind that is a real issue. I mean, you know, if we look at it and we look at offshore wind, for instance, as a discussion, you know, there are thousands of offshore wind turbines. Some of them earlier installed in 1991. They're well beyond their life cycle. So all of those have to be removed and repowered. So your point is absolutely spot on. And you know, from my perspective, and I believe this, is that there's going to be a huge opportunity in that venue. You know, figuring out how to take some of the stuff that's been used and is now sort of past that life, and how can it be reused? And I think that's really one of the biggest challenges before us, because it's not just wind turbines and solar panels, it's buildings and everything else, because nothing lasts forever. And we have to be looking at how do we replace what is with stuff that's going to get us there. And that's really the big question. I mean, you know, everything that we now have that we're presently doing was predicated on old information. And in a way, it's not going to get us where we got to go. And that's really the biggest challenge, because much of what we like to do is to just keep doing what we've done. And we can't do that anymore. And so it's a huge challenge. You know, I'm afraid that that's not much of an answer, but it's the truth, and it's kind of the predicament that we're in. So this is not a panacea. This is just an evolutionary step. It's not the end game. It's just another step on the path there.
Thank you. The next question is going to go to Serge. Serge, what is the operating soil depth of the spike probes that you discussed? And can you quantify what kind of toxin or the amount of toxin that's removed in terms of capacity for each one of those spike probes?
Yeah, so the easiest way to explain these plastic spheres is basically think of it as a spike designed passive sampler, right? With the exception of the brilliance of NASA is that they developed intellectual property to fill it in with a solvent that would open up the plastic lattice to allow for more and faster absorption into the plastic. And then the alcohol, because PCBs and other chlorinated contamination has a high affinity in alcohol, it would continue to clean the plastic from the inside. So you're never going to hit capacity on the plastic as it continues to diffuse and dissolve into the alcohol. The current ones that I have here are 12 inches and 18 inches in length. They could be designed for a longer depth. Typically, we design it for these lengths is because of from an EPA perspective, focus on sediment and pore water remediation. They're mindful of the first 6 to 8 inches of the benthic population layer. So if we clean that top section and leave the spikes there to continue to absorb the contamination like a sponge, it's going to start migrating the contaminants from below, although slower, but it will continue to migrate it into the spikes instead of in the fish.
Cool.
Thank you very much. I have a question with regard to the Cape specifically. How will these technologies that you've discussed, and obviously, Brian, you brought up Dennis Yarmouth directly, but how will these different technologies, if they're deployed, affect municipal water treatment on the Cape?
It will evolutionize wastewater treatment everywhere. And the reason I say that is because if you really look at it, we were selected by the Byrd Foundation back in 2008 as a disruptive innovation in the water energy nexus, and basically that's a technical term for somebody that deals with sort of the efficiencies between the water and energy utilities, and so it's that hybridization and that platform economy scenario, and it is very much in line with the same kind of a programmatic functional evaluation matrix that would be done by NASA in looking at where you're going to go, because you don't want to be wasting a lot of energy, you don't want to be wasting a lot of time, and you just don't have a lot of space for excess, and that historically has not been the case. So our problem as a society is that largesse has been sort of the norm, and that's kind of been one of the reasons why we've ended up in the problem that we're in. So we need to be more efficient in what we do. If we do it right, then in a very short period of time, Cape Cod's going to become leader and a recognized leader in this new venue, in this new paradigm shift and this evolutionary trend. And I can think of nothing better because, to be honest with you, and Judith, this isn't going to be lost on you, but globally, people are talking about the blue economy and the new green industrial revolution. And this is all part of it. So, opportunity knocks. It's up to the folks on Cape Cod to decide whether they're going to answer the door. And that's really the best way to kind of answer it.
Serge, would you like to answer that question too? How would the different types of treatments that you've discussed affect or impact municipal?
Sure. So I'll start off with the Spears technology. So what we do know of PCBs, most especially, is that they were widely used in multiple industries and multiple materials, such as paints, caulking, oil materials, transformer oils, and once they leach off of those materials via rain and into the groundwater, they eventually end up at the lowest point, whether that be a lake or a pond or in the sediments in the coastline. So if the municipal water supply comes from a portion of a pond that has PCB contamination, these plastic spikes will actually absorb that contamination from the sediments and from that environment prior to being in the influent into the waste municipal water plant, and not have to basically bog the treatment systems within that plant with PCBs, right? Because it's being captured and really removed in these plastic spikes. The other technology that we have, which is the UV Cube, which is now going to be rebranded as the Eco Cube. That's a UV treatment system to degrade and destroy PCBs from groundwater as well as stormwater. And if we could basically destroy those PCBs prior to getting into the plants themselves, it will increase the lifetime capacity of those plants and will introduce less contamination on the to the cities and whatnot. So those are our two technologies.
I'm going to ask Judith, would you mind taking your slide down? I neglected to do that, and when we speak, we're not necessarily taking up the whole screen. I have a couple of other questions left. Clara, who asked an earlier question related to the impact on the ecosystem related to solar panels as well as wind, actually has a very good response that she wanted to reply back with. And the question is, why would we need to invest in so much infrastructure if individuals, going to your point about looking for efficiency, were to basically compost their own waste and make sure that they limited the amount of waste that they created?
I don't think that we've gotten to the point where we have the technology where it can be utilized down to the residential level. I think we're close, but at the residential level, you're always going to either have some kind of a biological solid that will be left over from your waste stream, or you're going to have organics. Now, yes, you can do composting and stuff like that, but there's the idea of it, and then there's the practice of it. And really, that's kind of what ends up being the two ends of the equation. And a lot of folks would like to be net zero, but when it comes down to actually going through the process that you've got to do in order to become net zero, they don't want to go through the work, and it is going to be a major social change. That's where the technological evolution comes in, is that it allows you to have the same relative level quality of life and existence without having to go through the sort of draconian, idea of sort of a regression back to the Dark Ages. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that our planet can't handle the kind of stuff that we're going to be throwing around because of the fact that our planet as an ecosystem could handle about 1.5 billion people naturally. Right now we're cruising towards 10 billion, and in no time we're going to be at 10. This is survival and sustainability. That's kind of where we got to go. I mean, I grew up and I was a hippie, and 1970s Mother Earth and all that sort of stuff. And in my heart, I love this stuff. But what I'm doing is trying to use it in a way that allows us to be able to actually end up with the net result that we want in our real scenario. And that's the problem, is reality is here. And reality is, number one, that we've been putting off the wastewater discussion for way too long. Number two, our communities need to become more resilient, sustainable, and smart. That's all there is to it. If we don't get on the bus now, we're going to be left at the station, and that's kind of what I've been saying for 30 years. So I'm probably getting a little bit tired of it. But the bottom line is that we're at a decision matrix point now. The virus that has recently wreaked havoc on us has kind of set things up. And now with sort of what's going on in Washington, it's the time to do it.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask if either one of you has a comment, closing comments, as well as Judith, if you'd like to make any comments that you hope that people will take away with them as they finish with this particular forum in our last of the 4 parts. Thank you.
I want to say thank you for the opportunity to bring these gentlemen before your audience. It's been a great water forum here that you've put together, Madhavi. And I'm really excited about the thinking around the circular economy and what these startups are putting together and their strength. Because it takes a lot of strength to keep pushing on ideas that are disruptive. And I appreciate both of your works. I've been following Sarah's company for 3 years now, and I know it's hard. And Brian is he's a rock. So, and you rock. There you go.
Yeah, I think, let's face it, doing good it doesn't come easy.
That's a good. That's a,
And
yeah.
I remember
It's hard.
yeah. I remember growing up in the Philippines, and I remember if I wanted to buy a bottle of Coke, I gotta bring an empty bottle of Coke in and trade it off, right? So we kind of lost that whole reuse, reuse, the 3 R's, right? And I think we're all planning for this, for these really, really high level missions and trying to do better. And I think what we can just do is challenge each other and think if we're at a status quo, that's not where we want to be. We want to continue disruption, and never settle, right? Like for us, dig and haul and dredging, it seems like it's been done for 50 years, yet nothing has worked. Why do we continue to do it? Let's challenge it and try something new, right? And if it does fail, then at least we tried it, right? But the same goes when it comes to anything that's sustainable, right? Because part of finding the right solution is sometimes you have to find a few hundred that just didn't work to find out the ones that do work. And it's not about, settling. So it's not hard, it's not easy, but somebody's got to do it. And we might as well all do it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to reflect on how important this is, and how grateful that I am, honestly, that you guys put this together and created the opportunity for us to be able to talk to folks, because basically I'm a Cape Codder, and all the only thing that's going on here is that I'm driven by sort of a deep concern that I can't avoid, that I can't ignore, that's telling me that if we don't get this stuff done, people that are following us are going to be in trouble. And, that's called responsibility. And we need to take it. Because the reason that we're in the difficult position that we're in is because folks kind of just did what they did and kept doing it up until now. So the most exciting thing is that, and this is the really important one, is that there are very few times in history when there is a major disruptive change in the way our society works. And what a disruptive change in our society really means is opportunity. Because what it really means is the passage of what was and the entrance of what will be. And it's those folks that are willing to embrace that will be, that are willing to have the courage to take it to the street and to put up with the lashes to get it done, are going to be the ones that are going to be, sort of riding that wave. And all these analogies to water and stuff just make all the sense in the world, because we're sitting here on Cape Cod. We've got some major crises before us. Personally, just if I was an objective person and I was listening to this, I think that there's a couple of really tool technologies that we're talking about here that are very important and from my perspective, relevant, because we need clean water, we need clean air, and we need an invigorated Cape Cod. One that has good paying jobs, one that has a healthy environment, and one that is going out there like we did at one time, traveling the world and helping folks to solve their problems. That's what it's about. And Sarah, just as an aside, my family lives on Guam. and son's in the Navy, and so I'm, that area of the world is near and dear. And actually, if you want to talk to some folks that really know what sea level rise is about, you start traveling around the South Pacific and talk to some of those islanders who are watching their homes disappear. This isn't a game. This isn't a conspiracy. This is reality, and that's why we got to do what we're going to do. Mehdi, what you're doing, really, really, really appreciate it. We need you on Cape Cod, and Judith, Lou, and just, you're dyed in the wool. You're stuck doing what you're doing because you're committed to it, and that's the reason why the world is a little bit better. Thank you.
Well, we
Yeah.
want to thank very much to all of our guests, Judith, Brian, and Serge, and we really appreciate all of you listening and watching in. We've had a really great viewership over the last month, actually, and also before this with the economics of sustainability and also the economics of race. We will be putting on another educational program, but that will have to wait until August. So everyone have a great evening, and thank you all very much.
Thank you
Thank
very much.
you. Bye.